Hey YouTube, how's it going? So, if you're watching this video, you're here probably one of two reasons. Either you're a current subscriber of mine, and that means you're probably a knife guy. Most of my videos are knife videos. I do some custom knife work, so if you haven't seen those, go check those out. I do have some gun videos. You know, any guns that I have, I like to do reviews on them. I have some barbecue videos, and I'm a food guy. I like to cook. So, or if you're watching this, you're watching it because you did a search on venison or deer jerky. Not really sure what I'm going to name the video yet. But what I wanted to show you guys is how I process my deer. I was lucky enough, I had a buddy this year that actually shot a deer and was nice enough to give me about half the deer for meat wise, because I didn't shoot nothing. So just wanted to show you how I process it. You know, a lot of people just take them and get them processed and pay for it. I don't like to do that. I don't know what I'm getting back. Most of the time you're not getting back your deer. You're getting your deer plus 6 others. And you're not getting, you know, they're not nitpicking when they're going through it and pulling out the stuff that you really don't want to eat. Plus the way that I do this is pretty much everything that I eat. I don't make a lot of extra stuff that I'm not going to eat. I don't save roasts. I don't like cooking roasts very much. I don't make hamburger. You know, I can go to the grocery store and buy hamburger. I don't know why anybody would make hamburgers out of deer meat. I guess it's got a different taste, and you know, to each your own if you like to do that. And no offense, I just personally don't like it. So what I do first is I have several different packages that I make. So when I go through, I take the roasts and the things that have nice big sections of meat that are not fatty. I cross-cut those across the grain and then cut them up into smaller chunks, and I make deer jerky out of them. So what I do is I take a big non-reactive pan. This was full, so I've already started to process some of this. Put the chunks in here, and then the recipe for this is really easy, and you can tweak it any way that you want. It's mostly soy sauce and liquid smoke. For this size of a container, I put a whole thing of liquid smoke in here, and then I probably put a bottle and a half of soy sauce. And that's like my dad, that's all he does. That's it. You don't need to add anything else, and you really don't. I do add some Worcestershire sauce. I know I'm not saying that right, but I don't care. I do add some of this, maybe about a quarter of a cup. And the measurements on this do not have to be exact. They all blend together fairly well. I do add a little bit of garlic powder and some pepper, and that's about it. I do have a small batch of this that I'm making that I added some hot sauce to and some Cajun seasoning just to try it out. Never done it before, but we're going to try it out. So that's pretty much it. So, you know, take your big roast size meat cuts and cut them up into little squares. I'll show you what those look like here in a second. And then you put them in a dehydrator. You can do it in the oven. If you have an electric oven, you can do it at like 150 degrees on skewers leave the door open. But when you do that for that long of a period, don't blame me if your house burns down. Warning right there. So I would not advise doing it. These things are cheap, might as well get them. I actually need to add some trays to mine. But this is pretty much how they look. So this is about the size that I cut. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. Usually make them about 1/4 of an inch thick, so that if you make them too thin, then they just turn into really way too dried out and not very good. So that's about the size we do. And make sure you leave space in between them so that the air can circulate around them. And it usually takes about 10 to 12 hours running on this particular machine. So I'll set it up so that it, you know, it's noon today. I'll set this up so that before I go to bed, I switch it out, and I put it in a brown paper bag. You don't want to seal them. If you put it in a sealed bag or a sealed container, you're actually trapping the moisture in there, and they can actually go bad. So if you leave them in a paper bag or something that can breathe, they'll continually to dry out after you're done dehydrating them. And you can add some what do they call it? Curing salt. I normally don't. I did have a little bit from some hot stick that I did, so I did add a little bit of that. But normally I don't ever do that because we eat it so fast. As long as you eat it within a couple of weeks, you're okay. You can refrigerate it. This is not, I've never tried this and like 6 months later with eating it. This is pretty much, we'll have this gone in 2 weeks. So that's a large portion of what I do with the meat from the deer. The other stuff goes downhill from, well, I wouldn't say downhill. So I take the back straps, which are like the fillet, and I cut them into little, about the same size, but steaks. So, deer steak 2012. I vacuum pack all this stuff so that it lasts longer, because we don't eat deer meat every day, so I want it to last as long as I can. So these are just deer steaks, and I have a great recipe for deer steaks. If you don't like eating deer, you might like this. I have converted very many people over that would normally not eat deer meat. This recipe is awesome. So I will do that in another video, I promise. So that's the good meat. This is like the roast meat. And then anything else that is what I would consider edible, I go through and I try and cut a lot of the crap out. I grind it up. I have a big grinder. Got it at Cabela's. Great for doing summer sausage or trail stick, hot stick. I love my grinder. So anything that was pretty pure, I kept all the trimmings. I'll show you what I do with those next. But this is mostly the rest of the meat that is still fairly good, that most people would use for jerky. Most people would keep the roasts and then use this for jerky, where I'm using the roast as jerky, and then this I'm grinding up. Now I'm not grinding it up for hamburger. I grind this up so that and freeze it so that later down the road, when all this jerky's gone and I feel like either having jerky or hot stick, I can thaw this out in some cold water, and then I can either turn it into hot stick by adding seasoning, seasoning packet that you can get at Cabela's or Gander Mountain or wherever, and then regrinding it. This was ground on the coarse setting, so I'll put the mixture in there and then regrind it on the fine setting, and then stuff, and make hot stick. Or you can get a jerky gun and regrind this, run it through a jerky gun into your dehydrator, and make those thin strips of jerky. It's not the same texture as these because it is ground. I prefer the texture of the regular meat because it kind of breaks away. It, I don't know, feels more like real jerky than processed jerky. Tastes different because you're not going to be able to soak it in a soy sauce like this. Have to use one of their seasoning packets, but it is still very good. So I've got like 8 of these packages later for down the road, later in the year. So I'll do a video on that as well. And then the final, when you take all of your crap that you wouldn't consider eating, that still has a lot of meat on there, has some fat, has some little bit of whatever, just make sure there's no bone in it. Then I run through the grinder again. I run it through, and I run it through in the coarse setting, and I cook it on the stove. Get a big pot, something like this. Cook it in there. I add some water. I usually add a little bit of soy sauce, maybe some cornstarch to thicken it up in the end. I also add some rice, and you can add like sweet potatoes. This is dog food. So normally the crap that I would throw away and put it in the garbage can and be gone, I grind it up in the grinder so that everything's nice and mixed. You're getting a good percentage of meat and a good percentage of fat. And deer is very lean, so this is very lean, good red meat for dog food. I buy the cans. What I do is I have a dry and I have cans, and I mix that up for the dogs. I've got 3 dogs here. And that stuff's expensive. It's like $3 or $4 a can if you get the good stuff that isn't filled with all the extra crap. So, you know, a portion size about this big, I've got about 20 of these. I'll just thaw this out, nuke it in the microwave, you know, defrost, make sure it's not too hot, mix it up with the dry dog food, and the dogs love it. So instead of this going in the garbage and going to waste, add a little bit of whatever you want to it, and now you've got really good dog meat, you know, or dog food. You know, hey, what are you gonna, you know, what else are you gonna do with it? So that's pretty much it. This is the jerky that I do. I'm going to turn the hydrator on in about 10 or 12 hours. We're going to come back and check it out and see how it looks. This is going to go back in the refrigerator. I would recommend soaking that for at least 2 days. You can soak it 3 or 4 days, but don't like soak it for like 3 hours and think that you're going to get really good flavor. You know, by the time I'm done with this, you almost want to be able to suck the flavor right out of that dry, dehydrated jerky. And your ingredients are simple. I mean, if you don't want to go buy a bunch of stuff, soy sauce and liquid smoke, and have at it. That's all you need. And you can add other stuff, like I said, however to your taste. But you would be surprised at how good this is just the way it is. You don't have to go off and buy a $20 package to make jerky from Dunham's. You know, you can go buy soy sauce and liquid smoke and be done with it. And again, you know, so I make deer steak, I make jerky, I make ground up meat ready for either jerky or smoking for hot stick, and dog food. And I you know, don't waste anything of the meat. You know, I threw out bone, that was it. Which is a good percentage. I got a lot of meat and everything that I want to do with it. Good steak, good jerky, good hot stick, and it keeps the dogs happy every time I'm making this stuff and the whole house smells and they want deer meat. Here it is. So alright, we'll come back here in about 10 hours once this thing gets going and dried out, and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so now it has been 11 hours later, and we're gonna check them. Now what you want is pretty much completely dried out. You don't want it to be kind of red in the middle at all, of course. It should pull apart pretty good. Should be nice and dry. You don't want it overly, you know, you don't want it like burnt. But it should be, you know, chewy, not really red in the center. You know, 11 hours, 12 hours is starting to get a little high. You actually start to get it like black and hard. You don't want to go quite that far. So I'm gonna taste it. Yep, it's done. Perfect. Tastes great. Can't be any simpler than that. Make your own jerky. So all this stuff will shrink down. I'll pull it out, put it in a brown paper bag, and then load up the next rack and let it run overnight, and should be done in the morning. So if you guys you know, if you try it out, if you've never done it before, and you try it and you like it, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Or if you have some of your own suggestions, by all means, put your comments down below. You can even attach a video. If you've got your own recipe that you want to share, I'll approve it. So, kind of just showing what I do with my deer meat / venison that I get. You can also do this with beef, but you know, this is what I like doing with the deer meat. So, you know, jerky, hot stick, steaks, and dog food. So everybody gets a little taste of it, and we absolutely love it. So again, let me know your comments down below. I'd appreciate it, and talk to you guys later.